it's part of a market structure. Remember I told you the market structure, there are ways in which a business or a market is being characterized. That means what you do as a business, your characteristic as a business in that industry, your characteristic as a business in that market is the market structure. So one of the market structure is monopoly. So monopoly is a market structure. What market structure is a monopoly? It is a market structure where one supplier dominates the market. So a market structure that you have only one supplier that dominates the market, we call it monopoly. So that means we have only one supplier in that market. So just one producer in that market. So when you have a market structure that is only one supplier, we call it monopoly. Is monopoly clear?
Yeah.
So we said a pure monopoly exists only if one firm supplies the market. So if one firm supplies the whole market, that means one firm supplies all the customers, we call it what? A pure monopoly. So a pure monopoly exists only when you have just one supplier of goods or service that supplies the whole market, that supplies all the consumers. So it's only that market, it is only that business that supplies the rest of the businesses or the rest of the consumers. So when you have that happening in a market structure, we call it monopoly. So how do you know it's a monopoly? So we're talking about the features of monopoly. The first one, single supplier. So what's a single supplier? Single means one. That means a monopoly, you would know that it's a monopoly if is the only supplier of a good or a service. So I said a monopoly is the sole supplier of a product in a given market. So in this market, the only supplier of good or the only supplier of service is a monopoly. So if one business supplies all the good in this economy, it is a monopoly. If you can only go to a business for service, it's what? A monopoly. Do you understand monopoly here? So one of the characteristics of a monopoly is what? Single supplier. The only one that supplies in this market. The second one is price maker. So as the monopoly is the only one that supplies in that market, it is the only one that gives the price. So that's why we said it's a price setter. The monopolies charge higher prices and still produce little output. So what are we seeing here? The monopoly, because it is the only one that sells in this market, could charge any price it deems fit. It will charge any price that it feels like charging. Despite the fact that it can also reduce the output. Unlike when you think about the perfect competition or imperfect competition, where you have a lot of suppliers that could supply the goods and services, the only time they can increase price is to reduce the output. So for other market structure, they can only increase price when they reduce the output, when the output becomes scarce. But in monopoly, the output could be scarce, the product could be scarce, and still increase the price. That is what we mean by price maker. In monopolies charge higher prices and still produce little output. The product can be scarce and still charge a high price. Because it is the only one that produces in the market. Do we get it? So a monopoly is what? A single supplier. It supplies the whole market. A monopoly is a price maker or price setter. It sets the price it deems fit. A monopoly charges any price it feels like charging. Because no other competitors or rivals sell the same products as it does. It is the only one that supplies the product. It is the only one that makes or renders the service. Do we get it? The third one, imperfect knowledge. You know what knowledge is, right? So they said the monopoly is able to protect its prestigious position because customers and rivals have no knowledge about its trade secrets. So in a monopoly, rivals, there are no rivals in the monopoly. The only people that are the only one you can see in the monopoly are the consumers. We only buy. So we buy what is available. We don't have knowledge about the trade. We don't have knowledge, we don't have idea about what the trade is. We only see the product and we buy. We can't question the product because it is the only product available. We can't question the service because it is the only service available. So that's what we said, imperfect knowledge. We don't know about it. We don't have any idea about how the product came into existence. Unlike when we have a lot of competition, we have a lot of business selling the same product. or selling homogeneous products. Example like Coca-Cola, Pepsi. I could choose to get information about Pepsi. I could choose to get information about Coca-Cola. But in this market, you can't find information because the information is prestigious to the business. The information is making the business becomes a monopoly. So you don't have access to information. We don't have knowledge about the product. We have imperfect knowledge of the product. So one of the characteristics of a monopoly is what? Imperfect knowledge. Consumers or competitors don't have knowledge about the product, about the trade. We don't know. Because we don't even have other options. It is the only product available. It is the only service available. So what else do you want to look for? You can't know if it's the best or not the best. Because you can't choose. You can't compare. You can't contrast. Do we get it here? Yeah. So we have imperfect knowledge in a monopoly because we can't compare. Is it clear? The fourth one, high barriers to entry. A monopoly prevents other firms from entering the market. That's why it's called a monopoly. A monopoly does not allow other businesses to start to do the same thing as they do or as it does. That's why I said barriers. A barrier means a blockade. You can't. No access to the market. No information to the market. So a monopoly, you don't have any other business doing the same business in a monopoly. It is just the business that does the business. No rivals, no competitors. So that means no entry for any other business to start the same business as this business. So if I'm the only one selling, let's say, markers in the country, if I'm the only one selling markers in the country, that means there's no any other company that wants to sell marker. I would use everything I have to ensure we don't have any other companies or firms selling markers. And if I'm able to do that, it is what? Monopoly. Do we understand? Yes. So that's what we call barriers to entry. No other firms will be able to come into the market. No other businesses will be able to come into the market and do the same business as the monopolists. Do we get it? Do we understand? So in a monopoly, there is what we call pricing strategy. So because whatever this business is, it is selling goods, it is selling service. So we have what we call pricing and output policies in monopoly. How does a monopoly charge its prices? What does a monopoly do? Or what does a monopolist do when it comes to prices and output? So let's check. Due to the lack of competition, the monopolist is able to restrict market supply, which is illustrated below. So in a monopoly, the monopolist can restrict its supplies. A monopolist can charge the price it feels like charging. A monopolist can reduce its output. So let's look at the graph we have here. We have a demand and supply schedule here, a demand and supply graph here. Here we have the quantity traded, we have the price, the supply, and the demand. In a monopolist market, what does a monopolist do? Look at what we say here. The price, the quantity produced here, the output here, falls to Q2. So a monopolist could choose to reduce the outputs it supplies. So it reduces its output here. And when it reduces the output, that means when you produce little, that means your supply will be what? Little. Yeah. So a monopolist, because it is a monopolist, it can reduce its output. So when it reduces its output from Q2 to Q1, from Q1 to Q2, its supply will shift from S1 to S2. And as a result of this, the price will increase from P1 to P2. So this is a typical scenario of a monopolist. It can reduce its output to reduce its supplies. And when it reduces its supplies, it can increase its prices. Do we get what I meant here? So a monopolist can reduce its output, reduce its supplies, and still increase its price. Because it is a monopolist. Do we get it? Yeah. So look at the summary I said. Based on the graph above, by the shift in supply from S1 to S2, from S1 to S2, which reduces output from Q1 to Q2. Alternatively, we can say supply will be higher at S1 in the absence of a monopoly power. So without a monopoly, supply will be at the highest at S1. That means if this market is not a monopolist market, If this market is free for all, we will have our supply at the highest at S1. But here, we can't have supply at the highest at S1 because a monopolist has reduced the output. Do we get it? A monopolist has reduced the output. That is why our supply is at the highest at S2. So it means, logically, that if there is no monopoly's power, if there is no monopoly in this market, our supply will be at the highest at S1. But where is our supply at the highest here? S2. Because of the power of a monopoly. Do we get it here? So a monopoly would choose to reduce its output. When a monopoly chooses to reduce its output, it will reduce its supply. So the supply curve will shift from S1 to S2, a leftward shift. And when it does this, it does not reduce the price, rather increases the price from P1 to P2. So this is a typical monopoly. Do we understand? Do we understand?
Yeah.
So look at it, said, as a monopoly limits the supply of its goods or service, the price is higher at P2 rather than P1. So if it was not a monopolist, if it was just a different market structure, the prices will be highest at P1. But because it's a monopolist, as it has reduces its output, there's a shift in supply. The price has increased from P1 to P2.
Yeah,
so the highest price in the monopolist will be at
P2. Understand?
The highest supply in the monopolist will be at
S2.
the highest output will be at
P2, yeah, understand. Yeah.
Do we get it?
Yeah.
So in a monopolist, the highest output will be Q2, the highest supply will be S2, and the highest price will be at P2. So here, it's charging a very high price, and the product is not even available for the consumers to buy. Do we get it? It is not available for consumers to buy. This is a typical monopoly. Do we get it?
Yes.
So, monopolies are also able to use price discrimination. So a monopolist could choose who they want to sell to and the price at which they want to sell. That is what we call price discrimination. So what is price discrimination? It's the practice of charging different prices to different customers for essentially the same product. So a monopolist will charge customer A, not the same price as customer B. Could charge customer C, not the same price as customer D. A monopolist could choose to use price discrimination. So I will charge A not the same, I will charge A different amount from B, I will charge B a different amount from C. That is what we call what? Price discrimination. Do you understand price discrimination here? So basically we're talking about how a monopolist decides its output and decide its price. So a monopoly would do what? Could choose to reduce its output. Could it choose to increase its price? Could choose to reduce its supply. A monopoly can also do what? Can use price discrimination by charging different prices to different customers for the same product or for the same service. So if I am a monopoly as a doctor, maybe I'm a dentist and I'm the only dentist available in the country, I could choose to charge you a different price when you come to me. I could choose to charge her a different price when she comes to me. I could choose to charge different prices for the same service. So when I do this, I call it what? Price discrimination. Do you understand price discrimination now?
Yes.
Charging different prices for the same product or service. Do we get it?
Yeah.
Then, what are the advantages you have being a monopolist? Number one, it controls market supply, which makes it operate in a large scale. So what are we seeing here? If you are the only one selling goods or selling service or providing service in a country, it's going to be very big and huge. Yes or no? Yeah. Do we get it? Because you are the only one supplying goods, you are the only one rendering a service in a country, that means the business will be bigger. So that means a monopoly will enjoy economies of scale. Economies of scale. Do we understand? So a monopoly operates in a large scale. Because it operates in a large scale, that means a monopoly will enjoy what? Economies of scale. Do we understand? Yeah. That's an advantage. The second one, it is the financial resources to invest. It has the financial resources. It has It has the financial resources to invest on innovation. As a monopolist, you have a lot of money coming to you, you have a lot of revenue. Because you have a lot of revenue, you could innovate, you could do research on how to make your business or how to make your product become better. So a monopoly has what? The financial power to do researches. That is innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Do we understand innovation here?
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of revenue, you could do research.
Yeah.
That's an advantage for the business. So it makes the business to go better. It makes the products to become better. Do we understand?
Yeah.
So the third advantage of a monopoly is it eliminates wasteful competition. What do we mean by wasteful competition here? What we're talking about here is that with a monopoly, we don't need other businesses to do the same business as you do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give an example, the postal service. Maybe the Libyan postal service. So the Libyan postal service will send post out of the country. So we don't need a lot of businesses that do the same as postal service. Because how many people do send mails via postals? No, it's not much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand postal services here?
Yeah.
So if we can, so the government can take care of postal services rather than having it as a business for different people or different businesses. Do we get what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
So monopoly will eliminate waste. So we don't need to have the same business. We don't need to have the same business like 5, like 6, like 7. We don't need to have a lot of firms doing the same business, especially for businesses like postal,
Yeah.
like electricity. So having 3 companies handling electricity in Libya is a waste because the country is what? The country doesn't have large population. So the government can take care of electricity in this country. So instead of another firm to start up a business of electricity, it could what? It could start up other businesses. So that means what? The government has taken over electricity, which reduces what? Wasteful competition. So other businesses that want to set up on other industries, not the same as electricity, not the same as postal services. Do we get it here? So what are the problems we face having a monopoly? Number 1, inefficiency. What is inefficiency? Inefficiency means that the firms are unable to discharge to customers as at when due. Look at what I said here. Through resource allocation, especially private monopoly. So when there is a monopoly, when you have just a firm producing a good for the consumers, we can't all have it at the same time. We won't have it at when it is due. And that is what? Inefficiency. Do you understand inefficiency here? They cannot give resources, they cannot allocate resources to everybody at the same time. Because it is just a firm doing the product. It is just a firm rendering the service. So when the firm supplies, just imagine when the firm supplies bottled water for the whole country. When we have only these companies selling bottled water in this country, are we going to have it all at the same time? We can't. So that means, and if we can't have it all at the same time, it is inefficiency. Do you understand inefficiency here? Yeah. We can't have it at the same time because it is what? A firm producing the product. So, but when we have different firms or businesses selling the same product, we can all have it at different points in time. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. The second one, high barriers to entry prevent the firms and reduce competition. Because we said one of the characteristics of a monopoly is what? High barriers to entry. So that means other firms cannot start up the same business as a monopolist. So because of this reason, they don't have competition. And when there's no competition, consumers have no choice. When there's no competition, the prices are always what? High. That is the problem here. The second problem is that high barrier entry prevents new firms and reduces competition. Yeah. So no new firms can start up the same business as a monopolist. And as a result of this, there's no competition.
There's no competition. Yeah.
Do we understand? And when there's no competition, it means that we can't choose our product. It means that we don't have a choice regarding the price. It means that we don't have a choice regarding the quantity. That's the problem. Another problem of monopoly. And the third one, demand is price inelastic because consumers have no substitute or choice. So the demand for a monopoly's product is demand inelastic. What does inelastic mean here? It means that there's no significant change in the quantity demanded as a result of a change in price. Please look at the board here. So inelastic means that in a monopoly, no matter what the price is, consumers will buy. Do we get inelastic here? It said no matter what the price is here, consumers will buy. That's another problem of monopoly. The demand for its product is inelastic. And inelastic means what? There's no significant change in the quantity demanded for that product. Because why is there no significant change? There's no significant change because the demand is what? Inelastic. No matter what the monopolists charge as its price, consumers will buy. Because they don't have what? Choice. And there's no substitute to that product. So when the product doesn't have substitute, that means we buy any price they are selling. When the product doesn't have substitute, it means that we consumers, we can't choose because we don't have any other choice. Do we understand monopoly here?
Yeah.
So monopoly is what? Is simply a market structure that has just one seller of a product, that has one supplier of a product, that has one supplier of a service.
I get it.
Do we understand?
Yeah.
So this is all about monopoly. Any question?
No.
I'm sure.